Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 42 of the Primetime Rundown interview series powered by StreamYard right here on the Eastern Observer and the I-95 Sports Network on Zingo channel 198. Alongside the Toronto Blue Jays radio play-by-play man, Ben Wagner, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on this Thursday evening. And for those that might need some baseball back in your life, well, we've got it for you here this evening. Ben, how are you? And thank you so much for joining me. How has quarantine been for you?
Thanks so much for having me. It's always great to stoke the hot stove this time of year. And with the Blue Jays and their kind of emergence over the last couple of seasons being a young, exciting team, it's really easy to talk about baseball in general and obviously connected closely to me with the Blue Jays. So, so thanks for having me. Quarantine's been great. The hardest lift for me was actually before the regular season started when I had to go north to Toronto. And then that was a very strict 2-week quarantine. You were in the confines of, if you go over the border, wherever you go to spend your 14 days, some people go to hotel rooms. I was fortunate enough to have a condo in downtown Toronto and got to know the four walls very, very well in those 14 days. And then we got after it, and unfortunately for the Blue Jays, they couldn't play in Toronto, but we were in Toronto the entire year. We did wire to wire, all 64 broadcasts that we had with the 2 exhibitions, the regular season, and then the 2 playoff games. We did them all from a studio setting at our corporate headquarters. And once the regular season and playoffs came to a close, a couple hours later, man, I was on a plane back in Florida. So it's been back to normal as I guess this life is.
Yeah, it's really crazy, especially because of the strict quarantine rules up in Canada, where you have to go. For those that don't know, once you cross the border from the United States, you have to stay within 4 walls for about 14 days and ensure that you do not have COVID-19. So we're glad to see that you are now, in your home office again, and you're back down here in the States and back in Florida. But for those that are just joining us for the first time, maybe a couple of cousins of mine in Toronto who are diehard fans, and they were very enthused to watch our interview here. A lot of people want to know who Ben Wagner is outside of the Toronto Blue Jays media guide. Who are you, Ben? And very funny, I think the short answer is you're American, and you were born in New Paris, Indiana. So let's get a little bit of a background on you here and how you got into broadcasting and when it all began for you. Did it start in elementary school, high school, etc.?
It was we can go a long time talking about this one. Even though New Paris, Indiana isn't that big of a place, that's really where my love for broadcasting, and that's where it starts. My love for broadcasting started there, and it was a young kid getting off the school bus in the afternoon, and his grandpa and grandma always had the Cubs games on when they were playing in the afternoon before the lights were at Wrigley. Then we were looking for ways to be entertained in the haymows and in the fields too. So I was finding games on the radio. And I can remember when we moved, my dad built a house about a quarter of a mile of where he grew up. And his lifelong dream was always to build a house in this wooded area close to the farm. And he was able to do that. But this is before cable was available the way that it is today. And this was even before satellite television when they built the house. So when I was really young, we had to find ways to watch Indiana University basketball in the winter. And that's my team. That's my passion. So going with that, if we didn't make arrangements to go to somebody that had a satellite, somebody that lived in town that already had cable, and the Hoosiers weren't on terrestrial television, I would find the games on radio. And for me, that's where this love affair and the overall theater of sports on the radio, even before baseball, became my passion here. I was listening to Don Fisher and Bob Hamill and the cast of characters that were part of his broadcast. But Don Fisher has been there, I think, almost 50 years now, voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. And the energy that was coming through the speakers on those broadcasts sucked me in. And I can remember just being 7, 8, 9 years old and hearing, Steve Alford, Damon Bailey, Calbert Cheney, these great Hoosier players that I love, let a jump shot go off the baseline and Fish would yell out, "Good!" And then the crowd would explode in the background. I'm like, how does he always know it's going in? And, and then just the energy of everything that is sport on radio, with just that passion that you could hear from a rabid fan base. And me, I was immersed in everything from, just being a wild kid that didn't have a really good jump shot, but still wanted to be Damon Bailey, going hard through the paint, and looking to kick Alan Henderson for a slam dunk. That's what I was dreaming of. But, I was like living it through this radio call. And then I got a little bit older and we started working in the farm and doing it by myself. And I was trying to keep myself entertained. So I was finding baseball on the radio. And we could get Chicago. We could get Detroit. We could get KMOX out of St. Louis. We could get WLW out of Cincinnati. And I was growing up in northern Indiana, but it was like this crisscross of all these great radio stations and, more importantly, great broadcasters. So I was never without an opportunity to hear something that I was able to connect to on the radio or on television. So that's really where it started. And I had a wild imagination as I was a kid growing up, and I was allowed and encouraged to, dream about being anything that I wanted to be, whether it was a doctor one day because, the doctor was really cool to me when I went for my checkup, or maybe I went on the milk route with my uncle and all of a sudden I wanted to be a dairy truck driver, and get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and then milk cows for the majority of the day. So I had all these wild things. But one thing that I kept going back to was sports and reading about sports and being a sports fan. And that then propelled me to, well, maybe we could do this, it's a fun thing to do. That was probably when I was 14, 15 years old. And And that gave me an opportunity to sit down with my mom, and she hammered out this cover letter in our basement on a basement typewriter. We hammered out this cover letter to see if I could just shadow the local broadcaster. Mm-hmm. And as luck would have it, WAWC was invested heavily in covering local sports and high school sports, and one of those schools was mine. And Jason Samuel was a young, eager guy and the sports director at the station at that time. So, man, I've caught so many lucky breaks in my career, and the fact that Jason Samuel saw my cover letter / resume, noticed Fairfield High School on the information, and one person will tell this story that it was on the corner of the desk. Jason will tell you that he picked it up off the floor. Wherever my.
Now, did it fall on the floor or was it put on the floor? How did we what did we, do we have to figure it out?
It depends on the source. If I talk to Jason, he's going to tell me it was tossed towards the wastebasket and he rescued it, before the cleaning staff came in that day. And so I'm forever indebted to Jason Samuel for saving whatever, the eventual trash pile that included a young Ben Wagner's hopes and dreams. So he found the cover letter, the resume, and I can tell you, I remember the day I was sitting in Miss Brenneman's class, and I got a note. It was a pink piece of paper, and it said Jason Samuel from WAWC 103.5 FM would like you to call him after your day is done. And I mean, if the bell rang at 3:15, by the time I made it down the hall, dropped a quarter in the payphone, I was calling him at 3:16, 3:17. Yeah. Because I was so energized and just really eager to make this connection and see what I could do. And that's really the first opportunity. My first break was Jason giving me a ring back and calling to see what I could do, and again, that led to a million different opportunities and interesting things that I got to do in small market radio, where you have to wear a lot of hats, and it's very similar to minor league baseball. Wow. And with the number of things that you have to do in student radio at the same time. So it was a great learning experience. And, Jason Samuel was the main reason why, but Bill Dixon and Kathy Johnston, that were also drivers and leaders at the station at that time, were also the people that kind of made it all come together. And so without those three, there's just very little chance really that I would have the job I have today.
It's really unbelievable to the connections that you make and that everyone makes really make a big difference, because sometimes, especially now, the industry is so cutthroat, and now that everyone, Ben, is subtracting, they're not adding because of financial reasons due to COVID, obviously. And one of which we'll get to in a little bit are or at the time they were known as the Lakewood Blue Claws. Now they are known as the Jersey Shore Blue Claws. And with minor league baseball is no longer expanding, they're downsizing, and they're shifting affiliates, whether it be, for instance, here in the New York area, the Staten Island Yankees are no longer. They've now moved up to Hudson Valley, to Dutchess Stadium. So a lot of different things that are going on, and those connections. And really, the bottom line of my whole spiel is the connections are, they could be lacking because those people can't get in. And it's really amazing that someone saw your resume, whether it be, taking it out of your hopes and dreams pile, or, all joking aside, they really saw something that was, future talent. And clearly there was, because you went to Indiana State University, and you were you worked for WISU-FM and called both men's and women's basketball. Now that's something else. Now, you're in baseball now, but you got started, and a majority of your pre-Blue Jays days revolved around basketball. So talk about that experience, and I guess your collegiate days revolved around basketball, and then you eventually made the turn towards minor league baseball and professional baseball. So talk about that turn of direction, or getting off that exit, if you will, where basketball is not really your thing anymore.
Yeah. I would love it to be part of my thing. I really would, because I love college basketball. I love college basketball. I love the challenge from a play-by-play broadcast standpoint of college basketball. I just love the pageantry of it. And, even in the mid-majors, there's this ramp up to get to game day. And the blood, sweat, and tears that those kids go through to even make it to a college campus. It's amazing, and great stories to tell along the way. But go back to WAWC in Syracuse, Indiana. The challenge from everybody that I was close to there, in getting a lot of opportunity to be on the air, to set up, to work the board, to go to high school gymnasiums and high school football fields and set up broadcasts and do broadcasts. That led me then to have my first real air check tape, and then to give that to Indiana State. And Indiana State was my choice because, again, the influences that are around you, can steer you one way or another. And everybody that I was talking to said, go where you can do. And that meant go where you can get your feet on the ground and immediately get into it. Because if you start to drift away from broadcasting specifically, you're not going to get an opportunity if you're not around. If you're not working in college radio or college television, some things are just going to fall into your lap because you're a worker. And kids will bolt town, on long weekends or long Christmas breaks or summer vacation, where a lot of college campuses turn into suitcases, where if the university shuts down, kids aren't there to work, or, people that are eager, they start to then rise to the top because they're around and available and always reliable, right? So I went to Indiana State on my college visit armed with a tape and resume that the college program directors wanted to hear, and anybody with experience kind of got bumped up a couple of rungs. And that's really where I had another opportunity to feel like I could believe in my own talent and try to take the steps forward. And, Dave Sabini said, as a college freshman, when you come through these doors, if you choose to be involved in the college radio station, you will have an opportunity here. And he was true to his word. Within the first 2 weeks I was on campus, I was calling a football game at Memorial Stadium, and that then just gave more belief that I had made the right decision. So at the student radio station, again, you're allowed to make mistakes, which is great. I think it's a great experiential learning experience. That was redundant, but experiential learning that comes with it is such a foundation. Where you get frustrated with board ops. You show up and your Wi-Fi doesn't work, or you have trouble connecting to this, that, and the other. You learn so much by doing all this, and a lot of it's on the student too. Where you have to, or at least it was on us, where you had to show up and get it done. Yeah. So, football, basketball, softball, volleyball, baseball, obviously. There were a couple of events where we put on the radio cross-country national championships where we were doing results and updates. Track and field was there too. So I was just trying to get this incredible experience. I was trying to do as much as I could do, knowing that it's such a competitive field, and ultimately my networking because of it had to be well-versed to eventually get a job. I mean, that's what I wanted after all of this. I wanted a great college experience, but I wanted a job. And because I felt like this is why I'm on the planet. And that's to do some broadcasts and tell great stories about student athletes or the coaches or things along the way. So I was trying to do as much as possible. And I was really fortunate to get back to the premise of the question, why basketball first and how did I get off of that? Indiana State had a great run with their men's basketball team and their women's basketball team at the time that I was on campus. And it was just lucky. People were invested to it. The conference was great in the Missouri Valley, Southern Illinois, Creighton, Northern Iowa. Evansville had just made a huge upset the year before I got to campus in the NCAA tournament. So these mid-major teams were really big talking points. And in the communities, they were like a really big deal. So to get in there and be in love with sports talk radio and want to lead a sports talk radio show and then do the play-by-play, it was a great opportunity for me because everybody was into it. And that was easy. That was really easy to go to work or go to work, show up and do these podcasts. And the other big thing too was the women's basketball team, their flagship station was our student station. Yeah. So, just because of the amount of games and also then the opportunity by broadcasting all of their games, we got to travel. Yeah. And for anybody that gets involved either in professional, amateur, or college athletics, it's a different beast when you're on the road. There's a different level of professionalism that you're exposed to. There's a different way of conducting. One, from a broadcast perspective, there's a completely different way on how you conduct yourself versus, standard media that show up to press conferences and stuff. You're immersed in it every day. You're living with these athletes every day. And it's shorter on a college basketball campaign than it is, in a major league season where you report at the beginning of February and then hopefully you're still playing in October. That's a huge chunk of the calendar where they don't want to see you some days, and guess what? You don't want to see them some days. Yeah. Everybody needs some social distance, along the way. But basketball gave me so much opportunity, and while the men's basketball team was really, really good, everybody wanted to do it. But again, in my mindset was I need to do as much as possible. So if there are 5 extra games on the women's basketball slate, well, the way that I describe a bounce pass to the right wing or a feed to the interior, I can work on those reps just as good on a women's basketball broadcast as I can on a men's broadcast. And one hand will wash the other, in those scenarios. My play-by-play will improve regardless of the teams that are playing. And the mechanics of a women's basketball broadcast, maybe the pace of play on a men's basketball broadcast is going to be faster. But because those reps are just coming more natural, I hope to find myself sounding more natural on the radio and on television, by doing all that. So I had this huge pocket of time in 99 through 2002, 2003 to do a ton of broadcasting. And very similar scenario, my sophomore year, I was going to stay at the end of my sophomore year in college. I was going to stay in Terre Haute and do some summer school and just kind of live down there and try to get some local reps at this other. Crossroads Communication had a news sports talk show, so I had some summer work already lined up there. I was already working with the football and men's basketball broadcast, and moonlighting a little bit with the TV station down there too. Again, I was trying to get as much experience as possible. And guess what? Summer arrives and college campuses, opportunities open up because everybody leaves. And again, with that, then I went into the baseball season that year into my sophomore year, knowing that I'd be there. But then all of a sudden, we got like 25 baseball broadcasts that we need to fill. I raised my hand, and there was that summer specifically kind of opened my eyes to baseball, because there was a road trip where Indiana State went on the road. I think we went to Northern Iowa for a couple of days, had a weekend series, had 2 or 3 days to fill before the conference tournament. So I was on the road for like 10 or 12 days with the baseball team. And I never felt more immersed into what my passion is than that 2-week window. In preparing for it and thinking about conference tournament, all the prep work that goes into it. And I love doing the prep work behind the scenes and digging up the minutia of players and coaches and trying to find those storylines, behind the scenes, beyond the stats and individual game or series trends, right? And I was talking to coaches and players, and a lot of these guys I had class with, like 2 or 3 weeks prior to that. But there was so much comfortability between the athletes, the coaches, and me, and I thought, well, maybe I'm doing an okay job. And if you're around a baseball team that amount of time, you're going to interact with moms and dads, grandpas and grandmas, maybe a wife or a girlfriend, crisscrosses. And, they say, oh, I heard this game, I wasn't able to make it on Friday. I heard the broadcast. You guys do a great job. So it was really encouraging, and not only was it satisfying from a personal standpoint, it was really rewarding hearing the feedback from people that in a lot of cases are living and dying with every word, every ball that gets put in play. So you're trying to relay it, with proper excitement, and sometimes it's demoralizing too. You just have to act natural, through the whole thing. And fortunately enough, they never took my pass away, and I was allowed to continue to work and continue on. And that summer was a big turning point. And I thought maybe baseball would be a bigger passion than I was getting a credit for. Around the mindset of going back to local radio, whether it's a mid-market, big market, whatever. I really wasn't sure with what my career goal or path would need to be etched out. And I was stressed, man. Going into my junior year, I'm thinking like, oh my God, like I'm 20 months away from hitting the job market now. Like, what am I going to do? So I was talking about all of this with classmates and with some instructors, and Dave Sabini, who is the director of our student radio station, was a big baseball fan as well. And he really enjoyed my baseball. And he said, you need to get in contact with Dave Wilson, former Indiana State guy. He went to this thing called the winter meetings and he got a job. Call him. He'll tell you what to do. And Dave Wilson he had got a job at AAA. He had got another A job as a number one, and they had just moved their team to Lake County in Ohio. And I called Dave Wilson and said, hey, I'm in Indiana State, and I know you were here like 10 years ago. What do I do to work in baseball? And he suggested going to the baseball winter meetings. And now, for anybody that's tuned in and listening or not up to speed with what the baseball winter meetings are, the fact that the baseball winter meetings happen and you see the national reporters, talking about trades and interviewing the power agents and, all the general managers, that happens. That happens, and it happens right in front of you, and you crisscross with the biggest faces and biggest personalities in the game at the winter meetings. All true. But there's this other side to it on the minor leagues and minor league baseball, where every GM, club representative, They're there. They're sharing ideas. They've got this think tank going on because the business of minor league baseball is solely dependent on people coming to the ballpark for not the baseball, but the special events. And they're trying to drum up all this interest in their individual markets. And with that, they need bodies, and they do a lot of really good work hiring people that are looking to build resumes, and broadcasting is part of that. And Dave said, hey, go to this. And they always do a job fair. So see if you can get involved with this job fair and see where it takes you. So, okay. All right, Dave, what do I do now? And he goes, well, look for, you're not going to walk into Memphis or let's just say Buffalo, and take the number one job there right out of college. That's really, 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 really rare that anybody gets that opportunity, to have a chance to get a job like that. Focus in on the New York Penn League, the Pioneer League, where you can go out there and try to get, 50, 70 games of reps. Okay. And he goes, look for jobs that continuously open too. Every year, like certain teams hire number twos, broadcast media, PR assistants, and see if you can latch on there. Great way to build and round out your resume. Okay. So Lakewood, New Jersey was one of those teams. And the Blue Claws at the time were always bringing a number two in behind the number one. And it was an incredible experience because not only did minor league baseball prop up this job where tapes and resumes were pouring in, it was a really eye-opening experience for somebody that was splashing into the job market. And I would encourage anybody ever to interview in really tough situations. And a lot of these interviews are happening in a conference room, in a ballroom, at a hotel in Dallas or Vegas or, Nashville, Tennessee, or wherever. But like I'm interviewing for a broadcast position and I'm talking to Neil Solondz, and like 2 chairs down, a young girl is interviewing with Chattanooga for a ticket rep job, so we're like 3-4 feet apart, just a couple of chairs in between us. And the focus that's got to be, I thought it was, really intense. The focus, that is demanded in this situation to make sure you're answering the questions clearly. Eye contact, body language, so you don't get distracted because, like 2 tables away, a couple of guys that work together could be telling jokes as they wait on their next candidate. And so it's really intimidating. Yep. But again, good career advice. Interviews are always free. So if you have an opportunity to interview for something, you can always say no. There's going to be a lot of life-changing opportunity in interview sessions, but to just go through the reps. And I was able to interview with a couple of teams, and early in the process, Neil made me the offer that, launched this whole thing, and that was to come to Lakewood. And at the beginning of the year, that was like at the beginning of December, 2 or 3 weeks back in Indiana. And then New Year's Day, 2004, I was in a Chevy Malibu driving to the Jersey Shore and to do a ton of media, PR, photograph work, press releases, website. Again, it's about a well-rounded experience and wearing a ton of hats. So, and on top of that, a couple of road trips and a chance to call 3 or 4 innings of baseball every night. So that was huge. That was the carrot dangling in front of my face, going through a 16, 14-hour workday, at 23, 24 years old. And that was a huge opportunity. And little did I know then, when I was interviewing for the job in Lakewood, Neil was also interviewing for the job in Durham. So we're like the players, we want to get out of A-ball and get to AA or AAA or, maybe, God willing, one day make it to the major leagues. Neil called me at the beginning of my Christmas break that year, or like going into the holidays. And he said, hey, I just took the job in Durham. We're going to be together for like 2 weeks. So be ready to write, be ready to work. And that was a huge proving ground for me. I talked to the GM and I asked, hey, I was eager. I was so eager and young. I said, hey, I don't want to sell myself short. Jeff, would you give me an opportunity to interview for this job? And he goes, hey, you've done great so far. This job also needs a sales component to it. He goes, just get out there, work yourself to the bone this year, and we'll see what happens after this year. And things worked out. The guy that they hired decided to take another route towards the end of my first season in professional baseball, and Jeff offered me the job. And I had 2 years full time then before Buffalo came calling. It was great.
Really unbelievable stuff. And just to hear the journey, one thing that I do want to mention to all, I got to hear it, but we actually, I don't know if it was my end or possibly Ben's end, we did have some technical issues. So just before we got to Lakewood, New Jersey was where it kind of stopped there. But just to reiterate, coming out of Indiana State, I want to just rewind a little bit. I do apologize, Ben, and to all the viewers out there, I do apologize. So going back just to right before you graduated from Indiana State, you were given an Outstanding Service Award from the athletic department in March of 2003. Now, I want to tie this back in here with everything with Lakewood because, you have now, you're essentially a sponge. You are doing, as you alluded to, you were doing sales, you were doing public relations, media relations. So in the college world, or in college terms, that's sports information. So you already have some sort of or you know what, actually we'll ask you this. When you were at Indiana State, did you ever work in the athletic communications department or sports information department where you got to see certain things occur, or maybe you were able to work alongside them and say, okay, well, maybe I could get onto a more professional broadcast as opposed to sticking to just the student radio station?
Yes is the short answer. I probably spent too much time in the SID office, where they were like, Ben, you need to go away and figure out something else to do. I didn't ever have a technical role, but what I love doing too is diving in to find these little nuggets and trends and stuff. So if I found something, I'd shove it over to one of the SIDs, and Ace Hunt was there for forever. And I worked with him on the women's basketball side and the men's basketball side for a little bit of time too, in football. And, so if I found something, I would share it with him, and then he'd vet it. And he'd be like, here's a better, it was all about a learning experience too. He goes, okay, you're on the right track, but now let's look at it this way. So we almost made the nuggets, these mining little gold nuggets that we would try to drum up for the game notes or, the broadcasts. We would try to make them better. So never worked in the SID office. I actually did work in the Office of Communications for the school.
Oh.
And that was just another little step where I was getting the college experience, but also seeing the college experience through academia as well. Yeah. So I knew the sports stuff like the back of my hand. I'm going out with coaches and administrators, and we're having a good time. It's just a really good relationship. And again, if you're around a lot, people are going to be comfortable with you. And then on the other side of things, where a Monday through Friday, I would spend, 10, 15 hours a week in the Office of Communications for the school. And because I was a broadcast student, they would have me put together vignettes with video and do some video work about things to highlight at halftime or in between quarters about the university. So, I was talking to packaging technology students about, this new machine that helps them, make whatever. I was talking to alumni that developed, this patent to make a new baking pan. Or we went to Indianapolis and we talked with an engineer that was working with an IndyCar an IndyCar circuit to develop this new way of technology to do something, on the fly. So, I was getting all this stuff. So, so I was trying to do a million things, but it was really good. Those reps about writing and trying to prepare and be as well-rounded as I could be to see what that next step was, whether I was going to work for a production company, whether I was going to hop into local or TV, local TV radio, or whether I was going to try to get a job at a college. Yeah. I started to know some guys that were SIDs and broadcasters at the same time. I thought, well, okay, maybe I can do it this way as well. So again, I was just trying to do as much as I could to get as many opportunities as I could.
Yeah. And the best part is too, now we fast forward back to obviously after we had the little technical glitch and back with Lakewood and in New Jersey now. You said it perfectly where you are able to be essentially a sports information person, but then also, or in professional terms, director of media and public relations. And on top of it, still, Ben, you're still able to call 4 to 5 innings a night, which has got to be the coolest thing. And exactly what you said, you're still doing that. And there is a possibility that, this could be a future for you. How was it where you were able to do that and then ensure that you were getting your research done, your spotting boards done, etc.? It's got to be so difficult to be that director or have that director's title of a professional ball club, regardless of it being the single A affiliate of the Phillies. And on top of it, to be a broadcaster, because being a broadcaster is just a job in itself.
It really is. And sometimes, depending on the franchise you work with, being the broadcaster on the daily task list is the last thing a general manager or, and in minor league baseball, the general manager is the guy that runs the front office. He makes no decisions on the player side of things. He makes every decision on the business side of things. So the fact that their general manager may have like 9 or 10 things in your job description, I'll guarantee you doing the radio broadcast is 9 or 10 on that list of things to do at the end of the day. And I cannot tell you, especially that second year of my life, how many lineups I was scratching in my book at like 6:57 to get ready for a 7:05 first pitch, because maybe there was a rain delay and you had to update the website, or you had to craft a sponsor release. Because they changed the person that was going to throw out the first pitch. And instead of, the president of the company, now it's the chief marketing officer that's going to throw out the first pitch. And that needs to be highlighted in the daily press release. So those things take priority, because it's the lifeblood. The sponsorship of a minor league baseball team is just as important as the ticket that's sold, to be honest with you. But again, it's such a good learning experience to get all that and understand that you wear so many different hats and so many people are working just to get you to the first pitch or sell the ads that are on the radio that allow you to do what you really want to do that night. It was a challenge. I'm not going to lie. I mean, the job is hard. I wish people in minor league baseball, one, were paid what they're worth or compensated on the success of the franchises, because there are some really, really successful minor league baseball teams. BC before COVID. There are a lot of minor league baseball teams that are really, really successful and making a lot of money and not paying their people peanuts. So I wish one, that the time invested to those people was given back. I wish monetarily it was reinforced at the same time, but I wish that the business of sports specifically in minor league baseball, you just didn't have to run people into the ground, because, like 4 or 5 tasks every day are really, really tough for some people. The concession guy that's got to track down the final order, for the 45 suites that he's trying to feed that night, tracking down those orders was really, really tough. If you could just focus on doing the food, maybe the food would be better. I don't know. So anyway, minor league baseball is just a tough business period, and it weeds people out of working in sports. And I refused to say no. I just refused to get beaten up. There were some times along my career track that I thought I was going to, but and I looked at doing other things because I wasn't really sure if it was ever going to pan out, but it did, because I had goals. I had professional goals. I had personal goals. And I had a deep belief in me, and I had an awesome support network as well at the same time, with friends and family that loved tuning in at 7:00 every night to hear Ben on the radio. And, those were some of the drivers behind the scenes that kept me going, kept me moving forward. But again, minor league baseball was really tough those first couple of years. When I got to Buffalo, the job description changed a lot, so the focus of the broadcast was really important for our owners in Buffalo and for management in Buffalo. And you were just afforded more opportunity day in and day out to focus on on making sure those 3 or 4 hours you're on the radio every night were the best that they could be.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people, especially in our industry, it's especially and in college, we go back to college for one quick second, where sports information directors, a lot of people say that they are one of the most important people, or their department is possibly the most important department in all of athletics. Because if they're not there, then you don't know what the hell's going on in a game. And the same thing goes with exactly what you said, where sales, where if you don't get that ad on the radio, you're not getting paid. That's essentially how it is. And just to go off topic for one quick second, my co-host on the Primetime Rundown, who is actually also a sports information director out here on Long Island, said exactly this, 2003, and he used the time right when you graduated, back when our jobs only consisted of writing game recaps and collaborating with the media. Yeah. And it's to respond to that, Ben, is, just like you saw, you were right around that time where my co-host is now, and you see how not only it's changed, but everything now, it's Twitter this, social media this, where we have to ensure game notes, media guides, where every single soul are contributors.
Yeah, 1,000%. And it starts in that SID office where you want to do new and creative things.
Yeah.
And it happens in the big leagues too, right? Where we're using QR codes, to hear from the player, from the student athlete, the coach, about the recruiting process, or to even the phonetics, even the phonetics of a name. We can find in the game notes, scanning a QR code, that it exploded with all of these things. And if you're a mid-major, the Big Ten and the Pac-12, they've got video highlights, within seconds of their slam dunk, alley-oop, game-winning buzzer beater, whatever. Why can't the Mid-American Conference have that? Well, the resources and the bodies turning this stuff around. That's the reason why. Yeah, I mean, there's a million things. I think I said to one of Jeff Brown, who was the GM there, or John Clark, who was the HGM at the time, I said, I love the job. I love what we're doing there. I was passionate about the people that I was working next to every day. I said, but, here's the list of things that I had to do yesterday. I said, instead of me being able to run wild with these, they're running me into the ground. They're dragging me into the ground. Can we lighten the load, or, try to get an assistant in here? And that's the same conversation that so many people in every front office across America will have in minor league baseball. And I'm sure a lot of colleges have the same thing, where it's just not, you just don't get 4 or 5 days to hammer out the game notes, watch a ball game, and then post a game recap. Those days are done. You have to have instantaneously, you're updating the school feed. And we were doing it in Buffalo too. The website was really, really important in Lakewood. When I was there, the website, social media exploded when I got to Buffalo. So I'm doing the broadcast, and especially if we're on the road, if we were at home, we had other help doing this too. But I'm controlling the team account. With Jim Negrich having his hit streak, extended to 14 games, or Moises Sierra just drove in 6 RBIs. And when was the last time that happened? Okay, well, you got to tweet that out. Okay, right. Like all this stuff. And by the way, here's the tutu. So you're just trying to do all this stuff. You've got to wear many, many hats. You've got to be able to multitask. But what that is, all that stuff, really, I look back as an experience because of especially my life this past year, where I was put in a box to do the broadcasts of 64 games. And Major League Baseball provided us a number of different resources visually and behind the backside of statistics and stat portals and things. They provided some other tools for us. I know colleagues that didn't like, jumping from one screen to the next with a TV feed trying to call their game, let alone having the component of getting the stats portal with all the exit velocity, pitch probability, pitch type, spin rate, and then, digging up the video highlight, or, using those tools on behind the scenes. but again, because I always had to have my broadcast partner being one, Duke McGuire. My other broadcast partner was the laptop.
Yeah.
So working in that 3-man booth for all those years really prepared me for how to do things on the fly and not just lean so heavily on media and PR people to get us those nuggets along the way. And everybody in the broadcast business or in communications finds different ways to do shortcuts in their job, hopefully to expedite, getting information out or finding the information. And you learn your tricks to the trade along the way. And those were really big learning experiences that really paid off the most in my career this past year.
Yeah, it's really amazing because now during the times of COVID-19 or the, during COVID, DC, if you will, it's really an unknown moving forward, Ben. And now I want to ask you this. We'll hop around a little bit, similar to we've brought this up numerous times in the past 41 episodes. The Last Dance, where you go from 1980 to 1996, and then you go back and forth here and there. So I want to now go to today. And during these not only uncertain times, but March 11th, March 11th, 2020 will live on as the day that not only the world stopped turning, but especially the sports world. And a lot of people know, and for you, you're a diehard college basketball fan, as you said earlier. So you do know that that not only right here in my backyard here, Madison Square Garden, the Big East tournament was one of the last tournaments to officially call it off. And one of the last collegiate sports and sports in general to call it quits. When you heard this, and you heard that COVID-19 was real, you heard that it was here to not only stay, but we thought maybe a couple of weeks. We thought whatever it was. What was your initial thought when you heard this? Were you down in Florida at the time for spring training?
Yeah, we were a couple of weeks into doing broadcasts already. And I think baseball was waiting on one of the other leagues that were currently in action, to make a move. The NBA, the NHL, what they were going to do because, they were operating. Baseball definitely felt scary at the time because you weren't sure what they would do. And we were in Florida, and I am in Florida year round. What would baseball do specifically in Florida, where cases were starting to really go crazy, watching what was happening in the tri-state area, in New England and New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, specifically in Manhattan. What was going to happen, what ripple effects were going to be, because the people that made those decisions, many of them were in the hottest of hotbeds in Manhattan. So I thought, what the reaction would come from the NBA first and then the NHL. But where would this thing go? I thought they would stop fans from coming to the ballpark first before absolutely shutting down even play, let alone, spring training as we knew it. But it was a really, really, really weird 48 hours getting to that point. We all know the Rudy Gobert thing. Coupled with the fact that they were shutting down the tournaments in Charlotte. They were shutting down the tournament in Manhattan. Big Ten tournament was right on the heels. That wasn't going to happen. And let alone what was happening already with the Ivy Leagues and, the schools that are involved there. Their people were throwing their arms up really quickly and said, we cannot have our people, traveling in the midst of this. So while there was so much uncertainty and a lot of questions going around with the virus at the time, I wasn't sure how it would affect, what baseball would ultimately do. And then, we found out very quickly what baseball would do, right after that, where on the 12th, the 11th or the 12th, we had a game scheduled, a split squad. Half the team was going to Bradenton to play the Pirates at 1:00. They already had whacked the games in the West Coast in Arizona. They said 1 o'clock games proceed on. And we stayed back to a unique broadcast every year where the Canadian junior national team comes down to play a lot of Blue Jay prospects. And anybody that's Canadian always plays in that game too. So it was a really unique broadcast to begin with. And it just felt very, very eerie being part of the airwaves that day. Just because there was so much uncertainty and you thought, the hammer was about to fall. And what did that mean then? Would it be just a short layoff? Would it be a long layoff? Nobody had an answer. Everybody had an opinion. And that was probably the biggest hurdle to go through. And then just the trust of how you're going to operate your day-to-day life. Is it okay to touch a doorknob? Is it not okay to touch a doorknob? We heard about social distancing already at that time. But, in a spring training facility, it's a minor league ballpark where that booth is about the size of the person you're sitting next to in the car to give you a space relation. So you're close, you're in proximity. You cannot social distance in any minor league facility that we broadcast for spring training. So we were really unsure of how we were going to do our job at the time. So fortunately, anybody that we're closely with never got the virus. So thankfully, and I worked with a ton of Canadians too. When the border closures started to happen, editors, directors, producers started calling their people saying, leave Florida. You need to get back into somewhere in Canada because it looks like they're going to shut the border down and that would limit, your cross-border traffic. But again, that's when a million question marks started too about whether or not broadcasters would go into the bubble, what our role would be, if we would have a role, how would we call remote broadcasts and all that stuff, which, later on, as the months continued to drone on, we got more clarity.
Yeah, it's really unreal to see once again, and we continuously say the unknown, and that's what not only we're living through, but in that short moment, you got to figure out that, well, first off, you were relatively close to home because you live in Florida year round, which is okay for you. But the problem is that the people that are running the broadcasts, they had to kind of go back up and then you're left with the headset on and, oh crap, I have to go back to my Lakewood days where I have to turn everything on. I got to do everything in order to get this. But all joking aside, it's really, it's a scary thing because this is something that we've never dealt with. Not a soul on this earth has dealt with because back in 1919, I don't know anyone who's still around here that dealt with the Spanish flu. So to be able to hear that, what was the first thing that you thought of the moment you heard this? Because you were already in Florida for what? Or let me rephrase. You're already in Florida. You were at the spring training facility for give or take 2 weeks. Let's say in that range, or 3 weeks maybe?
3 weeks probably for broadcast, but 6 or 7 weeks. And again, I live in Dunedin, which is in the backyard of where the Blue Jays have spring training. So when that first wave of players arrived, February 1st, February 2nd, I was at the complex at least for a part of my day. So I was 7 weeks into covering spring training at the time.
Yeah. And the first thought that came to your head when you heard this was what?
The clubhouse is going to be a very, very scary situation, especially at this time in the baseball world where rosters in spring training it's fiction. You can have 80 players in a clubhouse at one given moment. There might be 20 guys in the clubhouse at one given moment. And while they're big, again, you're trying to fit 80 people into a small space. It's locker, 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 and then right behind you, locker, 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 locker. And then you've got a gaggle of 12 media people, that are kind of hovering in one specific area of the clubhouse. And I thought, with this virus, as we were learning about it and how it was being transmitted, I thought I'll never step into another clubhouse the rest of the year.
Yeah.
That was where my gut went. And then the ripple effect of talking about the broadcast booth and how are we going to travel to games if we're still going to broadcast the games for spring training? We can't carpool anymore. So we're going to drive ourselves. Are we just going to sit in the broadcast booth? Are we going to split the games? Are we going to do them solo? Like, I don't know. I mean, my thought process was pretty selfish, to be honest with you. Just because I was thinking like, all right, how am I going to be me and do my job now? Because you knew we were going to lose clubhouse access, unlikely to ever step foot around the batting cage because, again, you're in close proximity. And, I knew that the broadcast position would be one of the very first ones to get whacked off the plane or access, just because it's not that they wouldn't trust us. It's just the additional body, the concern of it. When I was riding buses in the minor leagues, you get to a point in the night where, guys are sprawled all over the chairs and we're riding the bus and you may get 2 seats, but nobody across the way for you. So, your legs are spread out. I wouldn't get up to go to the bathroom on an overnight haul because I didn't want to be the guy crawling over, the top prospect of the organization. And all of a sudden the bussy hits the brakes. I slip and I land on somebody's leg. It scared me to death in my entire career. I never would get up to take a leak in the middle of the night because I was so afraid of that scenario happening. And now I'm like, I don't want to be the guy, that brings the virus into the Toronto Blue Jays and collapses a major league franchise, for 2 weeks, a month, whatever the contact tracing as we learned, it could happen. It could happen quickly. Right. So I was like, oh my God, the fear factor was very, very high.
It's really unbelievable. And you know what? I think something that you might have to do now, you might have to now be like John Madden. And what did he used to do? He used to have his own bus and travel all around the country because he didn't like to fly anywhere. So you might have to do that if this keeps on going. But let's get back into more positive things. And Ben, are you okay on time thus far?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure because sometimes we get the I have to run, but just want to make sure and be as flexible as possible with you. So, going back to the transition from AAA to Major League Baseball, this is a big deal. March 27th, 2018, a day that you'll never forget for the rest of your life. You said it earlier. You work your tail off, and you do every single position in order to get to where you want to get to. The dream is there, and the light is at the end of the tunnel. Now we are starting to see where, I'm assuming you started to hear the talk of the Blue Jays main radio play-by-play man, Jerry Howarth, and what he's meant to the organization for so long. And did you ever think that you were the next in line to get this?
God, no. No. And again, like, not only was the Blue Jays broadcast position a dream position for me, but to be honest, every major league opening would have been a dream position for me.
Yeah.
And I've made this statement before. I was a finalist for other jobs along the way.
Yep.
And when you get that phone call that you don't get the job, it hurts. It hurts a lot. And to anybody that's ever really wanted a position, a promotion, whenever it doesn't go your way, you feel like you got passed over. And that's the way that it happened 3 or 4 times, for me, where maybe my first one, which was a pretty public audition, with the Dodgers. But, I was like 26. I'm like, am I going to really fill in for Vin Scully? Like that, I can't wrap my mind around that now, let alone, 14 years ago when I was going through that process. Awesome experience. And a couple of them where you think you were going to be the guy, and it feels like you get a tack hammer to the temple, in that situation when it doesn't work your way, and it really sucks. So tie that into the Blue Jays. I didn't want to get my hopes up, honestly. And Jerry, in a baseball calendar wise, Jerry retired pretty late. Jerry retired the week or like 4 or 5 days actually before their first broadcast, where he had a couple of health hiccups, in the 2 prior years. He spent a lot of time trying to do mock broadcasts to see if his voice would hold up. Talked a lot with his friends and family about it too. In fact, within 10 days of him making the announcement, we were jockeying emails back and forth. And, I wished him well. And, safe travels down to Florida. Hope to see you in a few weeks when I'm down there to do some Bison stuff. And hey, look forward to seeing you. Please, shoot me a note. We'll have you on the broadcast the day you're down here. Okay. And then, you didn't hear rumblings at all because it was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I know this now. A couple of days prior, Jerry had a meeting with his bosses and now my bosses, and he said, I can't do it. And they said, okay, we need to figure out a plan. And when Jerry made his official announcement, I lived it by listening to the app and Sportsnet 590 The Fan, and I heard the announcement, and I was like, sure shock. And again, we had been corresponding just days ago. So I was really concerned about his health. Because Jerry and I, since 2013, and actually the fall of 2012, had really drummed up a really nice rapport and relationship. And he's again been extremely helpful in my career and had been that way since 2012. So I was really concerned about the person.
Yeah.
And then the job as it was, I see the calendar. I know that they got broadcasts coming up. I knew Joe Siddall at the time was going to transition off of radio to his role in television. So not only was there one opening, there were two. I knew that. So I just shot a note to the bosses and I said, hey, unbelievable news. I don't know if your wheels are spinning. I don't know if there's a plan. If there's not a plan and you're developing a plan, I would like to be part of the plan. So along those lines, and I said, and if you need help covering the games until the dust settles or whatever the direction is that the Blue Jays are going, if I'm part of it, great. But if you need help in the meantime, I'm here. And that was on a Monday or a Tuesday. I was in Toronto interviewing on a Thursday.
Wow.
And I remember it was a Thursday. A Thursday afternoon, I went in for a casual conversation. 6 hours later, the casual conversation came to a close, and I'm telling you, this is exactly how I got back to Buffalo, rolled in the driveway, put the car in park, and the phone rang, and it was Jason Rozon, and he said, "Hey, really good job today. People that you met with really like you, got to know you a lot better. We're not still sure with what we're doing, but we want to get you down to spring training." I said, okay. And he goes, when can you go? And I said, well, when do you need me? And he goes, give me a couple hours. I'll get back with you. So again, broadcast, we're going to start on a Saturday. So within 48 hours, broadcast, we're going to start. Mike Wilner was already down here. And of course, the cluster of Sportsnet people that are down here too.
Yep.
So he said, hey, we're not going to rush you down to spring training right away. We're going to give you a couple of days, but we're going to send you to spring training with a one-way ticket. Good luck.
Wow.
And that was, my ticket was printed for that Monday. And, I got to Florida on that Monday. So within, 4 days of interviewing for the job, I was in Florida, and I kind of referred to it as broadcast survivor along the way, because I went down with a commitment of doing at least 5 games, but I had a one-way ticket, and I wanted my next ticket to come from the traveling secretary. Yeah. When I got on the charter and to go to start the season. That's the way my mind was working, and I was focusing in and leaving my wife, my dog behind with so many unknowns, leaving my bosses in a lurch, but they were so supportive of it. And again, the Blue Jays and Bison's relationship was kind of fostered officially in the fall of 2012. Great working relationship, great people that I was working with anyway, and great supporters on both sides. So it worked to my benefit, man. And I worked with a lot of different people, and I was hell-bent on making this my last interview or / audition. And so again, I was really concerned about Jerry while all this was happening too. Because anytime somebody saw me, they're like, "Oh, are you filling in for Jerry?" I said, "Whoa, I'm just helping out with the broadcast. I have no idea what they're going to do." So it was a long month and a half, doing all those broadcasts. But I did every broadcast for the time that I got down here. So I did 28 of the 30 broadcasts from Florida, and then got the job offer, and then went to Toronto to do some onboarding stuff and do some immigration stuff right before the start of the regular season.
That is unbelievable, and an unbelievable story too. And something else that really needs to be mentioned here is that the attitude that you had when you were getting the questions of, are you filling in for Jerry? You had such a humble response of, hold on a second, let's not make any assumptions yet. Because again, as you said, you were really concerned about the person, not the broadcaster. You were concerned about him as a human being, and especially with his health. So really, really good stuff, Ben. That's amazing and extremely humble.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's the God honest truth, and I'm still concerned about Jerry. And people say, "Oh, you took over for Jerry." I said, "No, Jerry retired. I just feel like I won the lottery, honestly. With this opportunity that I've been given. I think I've worked really, really hard to do it and get it. But when people always say, like, "Oh, I miss Jerry," I was like, "Well, hell, I miss Jerry." Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
You miss the people that become the fabric of summertime entertainment. And for baseball broadcasters specifically, that's us. And a lot of it comes with the longevity. I can't imagine being in New York City and that July 4th weekend rolls around and Howie Rose isn't part of the Mets broadcast.
Yeah.
Like, my God. I just there are ripple effects in people's life, that are going to change, and it's going to be very, very eye-opening. So, Tom and Jerry were an amazing radio duo for a long time in Toronto and with the Blue Jays, and literally the lifeblood since the start of this thing. And it is not an opportunity that's lost on me to know that every opening day, there have only been 3 people to bring you the first pitch of Blue Jays baseball since 1977. The first person was Tom Cheek. The second person was Jerry Howarth. And my past continues to keep working on the door. So I'm going to try to continue to do it as long as I can.
Now, when you hear that, Ben, and exactly the statement that you just said, because now really you're in the Toronto Blue Jays history book, and something that we had brought up earlier at the top of the show was that we want to know more about you beyond the media guide. Now, when you're in those in a statement like that, or we can put Ben Wagner, Toronto Blue Jays history, all in the same sentence, and we could say it in the same breath. What does that feel? What does that feel like for you to say, my name is one of 3 play-by-play broadcasters to call Toronto Blue Jays baseball? What is that feeling like? Not only in, they are Canada's team because Montreal is no longer there. The Expos are no longer there. They're now in Washington, D.C. as the Nationals, and they're the only one in Canada. Talk about that feeling and how you've made not only a humongous impact, but how you've carried on in filling Jerry's shoes.
It's overwhelming in so many ways. It's never lost on me. When I think about the job that we have to do specifically with the Blue Jays, I know people are listening in the Maritimes, that are bringing up nets of oysters in PEI. I know that there are people, sitting in gridlock in the middle of downtown Toronto. I know as, a 1:00 game in the afternoon, there's people going out for chores in the afternoon in Alberta in the plains, or they're in Vancouver. The time difference is 3 hours, and in Vancouver they may just be coming, to brunch when the first pitch of baseball is happening. So it's extremely rewarding that people are investing their day parts, and very interesting day parts for our broadcast specifically, in allowing me to be part of their life. That's what I use as my driver each and every day, that I roll out of bed, grab a cup of coffee, start looking at box scores and doing research and all that stuff. Because that's the precedent, honestly, that great broadcasts have given to me, and great broadcasters have given to me. So I'm trying to pay it forward in their honor. But it's also a standard of Blue Jays baseball on the radio, where I am not Tom Cheek, I'm not Jerry Howarth, they're not me. We have our own styles. Tom and Jerry were very distinct, different styles, but again, beloved. With the way that they called a game. And I'm hoping people will connect with the stories and the relationships that I build on the field with coaches and players, and then feel closer to their favorite team along the way because of the stories and things that I'm able to relay. So, it's humbling is the buzzword, but it's maybe the most accurate in this whole thing, where it's a job that comes with a lot of responsibility. One of the greatest things and most powerful things that you can have in front of you as a communicator is an open microphone. And I just try to do that to the best of my ability, day in and day out, to keep it informative, to keep it entertaining. My God, I hope we have fun along the way. And sure, the wins and losses happen and help. Maybe when you win more than you lose. And it's a lot more fun to do that. But I hope my personality resonates through some speakers and earbuds along the way, and people enjoy what they're doing for 3 or 4 hours, that we're alongside.
As we get into the bottom of the 7th of our interview here, for those that are just joining us here, we are joined by, and we've been here for the last hour and change, with the Toronto Blue Jays radio voice, Ben Wagner on Sportsnet 590. And I'm Joey Jarzynka. We can't thank you enough for joining us here this evening, Ben. Keep moving forward here. You were talking about wins and losses just now, and hopefully, obviously, moving forward, the Toronto Blue Jays continue to win. And there's some rumblings now where there could be some big players in free agency, and that obviously we've seen some trades a few years ago where the Jays made it to the ALCS. They traded for David Price. He didn't re-sign there. But then moving forward, there was some down days. Josh Donaldson was hurt. Troy Tulowitzki ended his career, obviously with the Yankees, but he had the downside of his career there. But now the Jays are on their way up, and you are along for the ride. They clinched the 8th seed in the playoffs, which will not happen again next year, we think. But a different playoff format, and that allowed the Blue Jays to make it into the wild card round. Unfortunately, they were bounced in 2 against the Tampa Bay Rays. But again, this is the first time that you have been able to call Toronto Blue Jays playoff baseball, regardless of a win or loss. Ben, talk about the experience. And again, obviously, you weren't at the Trop, but you were watching it on screen. How big is this for you, your development in broadcasting, and also for the team that you're working for, too?
Yeah, well, first, those guys.
Yeah.
Listen, it's about the players. They're the stars of the show. We're just fortunate, to have in this year a bird's eye view of how it was playing out. Well, and hopefully we get to be a little bit closer to all the fun, in the future. It was exciting. I don't know that if you're close enough and you know the personalities that were in the clubhouse and kind of making up the majority of the dynamic back in February, there was an air of confidence in there that I think, every player would say they knew Baltimore would be, down again. The Red Sox made some really impact decisions that they were not going to be a juggernaut. Maybe they would be competitive, sure, but they weren't going to be a powerhouse every time. And they started looking around the room and the Yankees have a lot of injury problems. And when guys get injured in New York with the Yankees, they're gone for weeks, not just days. Yeah. So, what could happen? What could happen if they started to put it together? And then with COVID and the expanded playoffs, when we got to spring training 2.0, there was a lot of belief, and the expectations were risen. And the guys were not shy about talking about that either. They wanted to be competitive. They thought they would win. They expected to make the playoffs first and foremost. So as they were kind of marching on, and I go back to the weekend against the Rays, where it looked like it was just going to all unravel. 18 games into the regular season, where they just got swept in a suspended game / doubleheader against the Tampa Bay Rays. It looked like they were going to lose Bo Bichette for an extended period of time with his knee injury. And you thought, wow. I mean, he was the straw that was stirring the drink at that time too, with the way that he was playing, and had been. We've never seen Bo struggle. Yeah. So, and you're thinking, my God, there goes the heartbeat of this lineup. As flawed as the lineup was and is, you thought that they had something special working, and you wondered if you took that little gear out of this machine, would it wreck the entire thing? The good news is, no, they actually played a little bit better. They figured some things out along the way. A couple of guys got more playing time, and it was really, really exciting for about a month straight. Then a couple of more injuries happened. Teoscar, who was MVP caliber numbers with average and power, and the way that he was playing, you're like, oh my God, there goes another big blow. Rowdy Tellez, who was having a great breakout year, he has a knee injury. You're like, oh my God, this is it. This is where it all ends. They did not finish the season as strong as what they possibly could have. They also had, a lot of games against New York where they were fighting for their playoff life. Pocket down the stretch against the Rays, which they were the cream of the crop, in both the Eastern divisions. The Tampa Bay Rays were obviously very good. But that experience, watching this team emerge, figure out how to overcome so many adverse steps, a lot of resiliency compounded into that, with players that had big moments, maybe not great seasons, but they had big moments. That was a lot of fun to witness, one, and then to channel your resources and in whatever the Zoom or virtual way of communicating was being done. It was definitely a learning experience where you were trying to relay as close as you could the energy and the emotion that was pouring out of that clubhouse or dugout night in and night out. Because, it's like 10 days to go. Mathematically, it looked like the Blue Jays were going to be in this thing, regardless of how well or not well they were playing. So they really had to mess things up mathematically to miss a shot at the playoffs. But, I think for me, it was about what those final few weeks would mean then to 2021, 2022, and moving on. That's where I think whatever the story and the script will be written on the upcoming seasons, this is the one we're going to circle back to. And that's where chapter 1 has to start.
I like the way that you said that. That was perfect. And clearly, again, this is a brand new book in Toronto Blue Jays history, the post Jose Bautista days. And it's now the Bo Bichette. It is the Vlad Guerrero Jr. days. It's really, really a Kevin Biggio days now. It's really unbelievable to see how all of these players have begun to develop. And now, who knows, there's some rumblings down here in New York that DJ LeMahieu could be on the move and heading up to Toronto. Who knows? That could be something there.
And to feed the media beast, right? And having the elite players be somehow connected to your franchise is important.
Yeah.
It's important for a fan base. It's important for the clubhouse. It's important for the organization, because I think that only lends credit to the direction that they're headed in. And if you could become the destination, outside maybe contract value and the years that go along with it, if you can be the destination because those guys are playing hard and they're winning and they're doing it the way that I want to play baseball. To have the elite players, and DJ LeMahieu is one of those players.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a treat watching him in the American League East, after, only getting snippets of him in the National League for all that time. same thing with Mookie Betts, right? There's a value of player that you just appreciate witnessing play the game, and to see it live in front of you is even a greater treat. But to have the DJ LeMahieu's, to have the Colton Wongs, high caliber player, think that maybe my landing spot could be Toronto and take a really long look at it, really leads a lot of credibility and power to the player, one, to get it done, but also to the front office with the direction that they've been heading in the last couple of years.
Yeah. We actually have one fan question, and this is again my co-host, Ian Schreier. Thank you very much for watching us here and contributing a couple of questions. So here is one. How does the fan base in Toronto connect with the Jays, especially in a country and also province and city that is very hockey driven? So Ben Wagner, you're on the clock.
Well, this is one. Thank you, Ian. Great family photo, by the way. This is a question that I think you have to look at it in terms of the calendar, where hockey and Blue Jays baseball, and unfortunately, in a lot of cases for the Leafs, there haven't been a lot of overlap. When things are supposed to be really important. In Toronto and in Canada at large, they care about the Leafs. You either want the Leafs to be really bad or you want the Leafs to be really good from a fan perspective. You're those Leafs, those Leafs. That's the reaction. So if you can get past that hurdle, that's great. And then Blue Jays baseball, takes center stage in the summer months, in the warm months, when for us on radio, where people are at the cottage or they're outdoors enjoying very much a short window to enjoy outdoor life in Canada, regardless of what province you're in. Blue Jays baseball is your entertainment during this pocket of time where people have a lot more flexibility for their entertainment investment, whether it's time in front of a television, on the radio, or actually coming to the ballpark. So, it's not that big of a hurdle, in my opinion, for us to get people excited about Blue Jays baseball. And as somebody that has witnessed in recent memory the excitement that is not only in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, in the GTA, but nationwide, look no further than what started in 2013-14 when they started to make the acquisitions. And Alex Anthopoulos kind of went all in on Josh Johnson, R.A. Dickey, Troy Tulowitzki, and, moving forward in that phase. Russell Martin was part of that. Yeah. Then you get into blossoming with Eddie Encarnacion, and Jose Bautista becomes their team. They went out, they got Jose Reyes. Obviously, that didn't work out for too long. But, that team, those big moments, the home runs, the pitching staff was unbelievable. People could not consume enough Blue Jays baseball. That train is going to roll down the tracks on its own. And the people will, forget bandwagon. This is a steaming locomotive ripping through the countryside. And people are just going to hop on. And it'll be even more out of control because people, if they get this thing going, people have been waiting on Kevin and Bo and Vlad and now Jordan Romano and Ryan Borucki, because they've seen him since they got drafted. They've seen him in Vancouver and in New Hampshire win championships. And, they're young faces, with managers that are now on the coaching staff in the big leagues. Like, they have literally grown up with these players. So the investment of them will, I think the investment from every household will be like watching their own children grow up, because that's what's happening. From a Blue Jay perspective, these kids are growing up and they're blossoming into be, the next wave of what the franchise will be forever connected with.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable because, first off, Ian, thank you very much for that question. And also, Ben, he also thanks you for Noah Syndergaard. He's a diehard Mets fan as well.
Yeah.
He doesn't thank you so much for Travis Darno, but that's his own. That's his.
He'd love to have Travis Darno this year.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, that's
Which
all,
version do you want, right? Yeah.
That's all Brody Van Wagenen's problem. We'll have that discussion on Friday, Ian. But going back to you personally, Ben, with now obviously with you being the voice of the Toronto Blue Jays, you are in the biggest market in Canada. Again, it's really unbelievable to see that you are there to get Ian said, I'll take Steve Cohen instead. Oh, good Lord. But you're in the Rogers Center and you're in the Dome. It's, again, a different atmosphere. And back in 2016 or 2015 or whenever it was that you guys had made the ALCS, and, you know, the legendary bat flip, you have 50,000+ screaming fans that live and breathe Toronto Blue Jays baseball. How much do you want to see that come back to fruition with you on that call? Oh my God. How badly do you want to see that?
I mean, I try not to think about the call, honestly, just because that's a really dangerous, I think in my profession, it's a really dangerous place to live, you know, to start to plot out what you would say, what you would think, what you would maybe have occur in those moments that may never exist. But one, I hope I do it. It's justice. You know, that's ultimately that's every day.
Yeah.
You know, you're just trying to show up and make my mom proud. You know,
Mom, I made it.
Yeah, Mom. I know she's listening, so I don't want her to, you know, wrinkle her nose at something I say. So, you know. Yeah, you want to be part of it. You know, there was a really long time in the minor leagues for 14 years, and for the large majority of that, I thought about making it to the major leagues literally every single day that I woke up and went to work, and you know, tried to plot a course for somehow if I could get over this mountain and make it to a major league broadcast booth. And now my goal, literally every day that I wake up, is to make sure that I am as closely connected to the Toronto Blue Jays as I possibly can, because I know a fan base is so thirsty for every nugget, for every moment that this team has, whether they're losing 95 games or they're winning 95 games. There is still a passionate fan base that exists without the wins and the losses. I know with the wins, it'll only be amplified. And I don't want to be caught in scramble mode, you know. So I better have my together today, because I know it'll only help me down the road in preparing for those big moments. And you know, in our COVID life, I think we realized, you know, we don't get as much access as what we usually get. And I know, talking with colleagues that have been deep into the playoffs and done a lot of playoff games across the way, you don't get the normal access that you generally get day in and day out, even as the club broadcaster. You know, once you get deep into the playoffs, you know, it's controlled by Major League Baseball. Your clubhouse access is very limited, you know, so you don't get an opportunity to have some of those deep conversations that you may have at 3:30 in the afternoon, you know, just because you don't have the access. So again, I am trying to prepare for those future days right now. Yeah.
It's really, again, really unbelievable that we are in the world of the unknown, but eventually, and really also as we head into the bottom of the ninth of our conversation, you have been calling all games virtually on a screen. And talk about the transition and how difficult it was for you at first, because I mean, any broadcaster can say, oh yeah, it was easy. But then you think about it and like, hold on a second. You're calling it. You usually can see the action. You're in the building. You could see left. You could see down the left field line, down the right field line. You could see the whole building. Now you can see what the cameras are showing you. How difficult is that to be able to provide a solid, especially radio call, to your audience?
There were a lot of growing pains along the way. That, you know, again, it was my mindset at the very beginning of this, So when I tell you some of the obstacles that we had, my goal going into every broadcast, and especially in those days leading up to get my mind right, I never wanted that to be the crutch. And I knew this because so many people were texting me and calling me and say, I can't wait to hear games on the radio again, have sports on the radio and television again. It'll be a great escape for whatever their life includes, right? So I knew that our job and the pressures of our job, or at least, the ability for us to do our job, will mean more to people at this moment than they ever have. And baseball is such a big part of that because it's such a leisurely investment. Big plays are exciting, sure, but the leisure approach to a baseball broadcast for me, telling the stories and developing all that 1 through 9, will be a little bit more amplified. Because people will want to be connected to this team. If they're exciting, that's great. But you know what? People just needed to turn off the news. Or just, cuddle up with their kid on the couch and watch a little bit of the game, or just, drive around. Or like I said, cottage country is a big listener territory for us. People escape the city. Some of them had been living in cottage country, and the way that they get Blue Jays baseball is on the radio. So we knew that we would be trusted with a lot of ears that were just going to be invested in us more so than normal. And I told Mike Wilner, my broadcast partner, and I told our bosses, I said, I'll be damned if I use what we're not seeing as an excuse, but I still am going to be honest with people. So honesty was the first step in me doing my job, because then that reset my mind to be honest with myself, and allow myself a little bit of grace. If you can't see it, you can't see it. So the first exhibition broadcast that we had in Boston were a little bit clunky. The broadcast was a little bit clunky, camera cutaways or stuff we wanted to talk about, we really couldn't see. So that was the training of what will be what they call global or international feed, where it's just not dictated one way or the other. If I'm talking about Blue Jays manager Charlie Montoyo and we're in Boston, the camera cut away, inevitably he's going to find Ron Renicky or, Alex Verdugo when I'm telling a Charlie Montoyo story. Right. Again, it's radio, so I'm not going to be solely dependent on what the pictures are. But we had a lot of trouble with, and I say we for my profession, because talking with people over the course of the year and, since the season ended, we all had the same struggles, so it was a very good therapy session for all of us to share these war stories. Yeah, if you're in the ballpark and you're watching things live, a ball is hit hard on a low line drive. Your depth perception on television changes. Natural human reaction for the guys that are in the truck, you can't get to it fast enough. So I see a swing. If I'm in the ballpark, I see the swing, I see a low line drive, I can see if it's chopped in front of the plate. Well, I may be able to see if it's chopped in front of the plate on a TV screen, but I don't know if the guy spears it on a short hop, if it's caught on a low line, did he pluck it right off his laces? A lot of those things were really, really difficult. And, some camera operators, directors, producers are quicker on the trigger in transitioning those shots. So it gives you a little bit more of a fighting chance. But again, you had to take a step back and relax your call a little bit and, hit hard down to third, caught on a line. It's just not line to third and caught, or diving grab, like one of those things. So the cadence of your play changes a little bit. Stupid stuff changes a little bit too. Like a pickoff play over at first, camera zooms in, you see the tag go down a guy's arm. And then if you don't see a natural reaction from the player on the field, you don't know if he's safe or out because you can't hear or see an umpire.
Right.
So it's those little things where we really had to learn what's going on. And replay reviews are always difficult, even if we're in the ballpark. More so this year. Balls in the gap with a runner at first. You never see momentum build in a play. Do you see somebody power down going to third base? All that stuff, I'd be watching as I'm in the broadcast booth in the ballpark. Ball gets kicked in the corner. does it shoot away from the defender because the camera cutaway goes to the guy rounding third?
Yeah.
Like all that stuff is difficult, and again, you had to pull back a little bit. You had to clean up the play. And I would say, and again, baseball gave us some amazing resources and everything was pretty standard for our tools to do the job, where we had a TV feed and then we also had 4 other monitors that we could look at, or 4 other camera views in a monitor with both bullpens. We had what I call the all 9, which is a high home, or the all 22 if you're a football fan, where you see every player that's on the field. It's a static shot. We had one of those, but again, like some of these broadcast locations are on the moon, so you can't even see the ball. Like you see the position and shifting of the players, which is really helpful. But once you lose the ball, like it doesn't really help you. So you got to depend on the camera feed, the TV feed. Yeah, so again, we tried to do the best we could, but those are just some of the obstacles that we would have every day. And you just hope, through the rhythm of the broadcast, of the plays, and just leaning on your experience, Kevin Biggio's got a shot to score on that ball that gets plugged into the gap or down the line. Danny Jansen or Rowdy Tellez, they're not. So you just use your instinct. And then if all of a sudden, if you see, the camera cutaway goes to one of those guys rounded third, you're as surprised as everybody else should be. So then you ramp up the call, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of those things can be organic, and they're allowed to be organic, especially in these times. Again, you're just honest with people. And, at the end of the day, it was certainly an education. I desperately miss. And we were, from a Blue Jays perspective, we were not like most of my brethren, where we at least saw half the games live. We saw every broadcast in the studio. I know, like the Nesson TV broadcast did that, but, Nesson or the Red Sox radio saw half the games from the broadcast booths, and then did the rest on the monitors. But we did every game from the studio. So, hopefully those days are in the rearview mirror.
Fingers crossed. But the good thing, exactly what you said, is that the experience, and this really, to wrap up the whole interview, basically, is that the experience is what comes into play. It's the people that it's the experience, and now you are one of 30 Major League Baseball radio play-by-play people, broadcasters rather, that now have roughly, 50 or so games under their belt to do this. And really, again, something that all of us as journalism students, or when I was a journalism student, I'm trying to act young here.
We're all students, we're all students, especially now.
That's true.
Oh, God. We're all learning, right?
Exactly. And, something that every journalism teacher, professor always says is that on radio, you're trying to tell the story, but you have to be extra descriptive. And that's the part where I find it so fascinating for not only you, Ben, but also for guys here, John Sterling, Howie Rose, just so many of these play-by-play broadcasters that had to do it in a studio or look at monitors or however it was. It's really a job well done, because I will be honest with you, I listened to about, I think it was 2 broadcasts with you on there, and really, really a good job. And honestly, it sounded to me like you were in Buffalo. But again, that building very well. Building very well. You have a lot of experience there. So, that's really an amazing job. And hopefully this does not continue where you're back in the Sky Dome.
I hope we're back in Toronto. And it's like we spend a lot of time talking about the negative, just in our industry, right? About the obstacles that we had along the way. The positives in all of this is, I try to look at it. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I try to look at it as like, all right, I had to rely on the monitor a lot this year. Did that make me a better TV broadcaster? I look at the monitor for every pitch now. Is my pitch recognition better because of what I went through this year? And is that going to translate, where while I see the field of play in front of me, It's the major leagues. We have amazing resources at our disposal. And one of the things is every booth that we're in, we have at least one monitor. Sometimes we have 3 monitors. Is as that pitch is going in, is my eye now going to track to the monitor more, so I can differentiate, is it a slider or a cutter that this guy is throwing? Can my description be that much finer moving forward in the rest of my career? Like those little things where I really, in the majority of my career, I never would trust a monitor.
Yeah.
Ever trust a monitor in a lot of places, mainly because like we would go in places and like they'd have 15-year-old, 16-year-old, TV radio students from high school in a program, running these cameras. You just couldn't trust what they were going to, provide for you. Not their fault. They're learning too.
Yeah.
But when I'm in Durham, North Carolina, I don't care about the kid eating cotton candy, beyond the third base dugout. Cute shot, but I need to see behind the plate. Like one of those things again. So like that learning experience for me was really tough when I went to the big leagues about being able to trust the monitor and make it part of the science, or at least the rhythm of my broadcasts day in and day out. But now I've had to rely on the monitor, and I owe the people behind the scenes a ton of beer, because they made sure that our camera feeds were always good. What we heard in our headset lined up with the pictures that we had. And I mean, whatever the social experiment was for Major League Broadcasting this year, we definitely had a great pool of people to work with on our behalf to make it sound, and that's the biggest compliment. When people say, like you did, Joey, that it sounded like you were in Buffalo, or man, I thought you guys were in Baltimore last night or at the Trop. That's the greatest reward, for our broadcast, because we didn't want it to sound different, and we weren't going to use our obstacles to detract from the listener or viewer experience. And again, I learned a ton along the way, and hopefully I put a couple of more tools in the box, that we're going to take for the rest of this magic ride that we're on.
And as you brought up earlier, maybe it could get you a TV broadcasting job. Dan Schulman, Buck Martinez, watch out. Ben Wagner is coming for you jobs. And Rogers, if you're watching, he's coming for you. So to conclude our conversation, I never like to call it an interview. I always love to call it a conversation because it's never an interview. I love to just converse with people in my industry, or our industry. Never like to say our industry. And now during these rough times, we have aspiring broadcasters, myself, but others younger than myself, freshmen, sophomores in college. And there's obviously a lot of mental illness that has developed as well, because we are told to either on the West Coast, we've heard the phrase shelter in place. Here in New York, we've heard New York pause. We've told to stay inside. And now, as an aspiring broadcaster, journalist, what would be your advice to those that really have their head in the sand and say, I can't do this? And how do we eventually get our heads out of the sand? How can we do this, especially for those that do not have not only the facility, but they don't have the sports department, because some of the athletic departments are closed. They're now defunct, some of them. But also, you simply don't have access because of the coronavirus. What do you tell them to do at home, in their condos, apartments, etc.?
I'm a big believer of you learn by doing. So and I meant mention of this when we were talking in my Indiana State days, right?
Yep.
The basketball court is the same, whether it's women's basketball being played on it or men's basketball being played on it. The mechanics of a broadcast can always be fine-tuned. I learned so much this past year, but I also had 14 years of a minor league experience to build on, where I had the fortune of calling no-hitters and triple plays and, like these weird things that happen in the course of a baseball game, let alone knowing the rule book. Brush up on those skills, maybe, if you've got the extra time. A lot of people don't know, they don't know. So that would be a really good investment. But if I'm way more of a believer now than I ever would have been before. That you could get your reps done by calling it off the monitor. And it may not be the real, that you're going to send to a prospective employer after this thing is all said and done, but you're going to be sharper because of it. So, don't be afraid to turn down the sound. Use this time to network maybe a little bit more and send a demo reel out to somebody you may or may not know. But definitely give that advice. And because a lot of people are just sitting around, like waiting on something to happen or something else to do. And Joey, I'm sure you're that way. I am certainly this way. I would not be where I'm at unless somebody invested the time to help me out along the way, whether it was just one little review, one little nugget, suggestion here or there, or rescue your resume from going into the trash bin. You would not be in this situation without somebody helping you along the way. And many people in our industry, whether you're writing or on the air every day of the week, will invest that time back because somebody paid it forward for them. And I think a lot of people in our industry have not lost touch with that, and they will invest the time if they've got it afforded to give. So I think there are a million different ways, you can be creative while being constructive for your own career and try to move it forward while we think we're idle at this time. I think there's definitely opportunity for young people and current people, during the shutdown, I was like everybody else. I was going through the Rolodex too, and calling people and checking in with people that I hadn't touched base with on a regular basis for eons. So, and don't forget to thank those people along the way, and fire off one of those notes or maybe make a call to say thanks. And who knows where that conversation will lead, So I would say invest the time wisely and write it out. Does it look like it's going to be an easy roadmap and attainable? If it's not, give it some time to percolate, and just start by doing what's necessary, then by what's possible. And then finally, you're going to get an opportunity to do what felt impossible. That's my advice.
A perfect way to end our conversation, north of the border style. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky. That is exactly the perfect way, not only to end our conversation, but for all the aspiring broadcasters, journalists out there. Ben just said it in his own words, because really that is what you have to do, and you have to stay persistent, because if you don't, well, your head could be in the sand for a very, very long time, and who knows, 40 or 50 can roll around, and that'll do. Ben Wagner, ladies and gentlemen, the Toronto Blue Jays radio play-by-play voice for Rogers Sportsnet 590 in Toronto. Ben, I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you for spending nearly 2 hours and taking 2 hours of your time to chat with some Long Island kid. I really appreciate it, man.
You're welcome, Joey. It was a real pleasure.
So before we do go, we just want to say something actually that Ben had alluded to earlier. Ian Schreier actually is taking over the hosting seat on episode number 43 of the interview series powered by StreamYard. Former SNY contributor, ESPN 1050 AM New York Mets contributor Adam Rubin, who now has turned sports information director. He is giving back to the community, Ian Schreier that is, and is going to be speaking with Adam Rubin. He is the associate athletic director for strategic communications just a few miles east of me in Stony Brook. So that's going to be a lot of fun on Monday night at 8 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer.
Tell Adam hello for me, by the way.
Absolutely.
Good dude. Good dude.
You're watching? We definitely will.
Well. Know him really well.
That's excellent. So we'll definitely pass along that message to Adam Rubin. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, for Ben Wagner, I'm Joey Jarzynka, and for all of us at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group, we'll see you next time.